Like
you can't just fly at the hole.
I know. Like you got to go up the crack and then slip it into the hole. Now we are to episode 4. The one that started it all.
Relief.
So this was obviously, this might not have even been my first Star Wars movie that I seen. I remember as a little kid watching Star Wars, but never as my first time, but like seeing stuff in my first times because it used to get played all the time. USA used to play it like every night the month of December, like a different Star Wars movie, because they bought the rights for cheap, and it was early 90s or mid 90s or whatever. But yeah, this one starts off as cinematic as any movie in history. Like when you think of the times, you think of the technology, and think of sitting in a movie theater, and the trumpets go bang, and then it starts the Star Wars music that you didn't know would be iconic, because they wanted to, like, everybody pushed for like a disco type soundtrack, and he wanted classical music, which was a brilliant choice. And then you watch the scroll, and you know, originally wasn't episode 4, but you read, hey, there's a Civil War, Rebels, Empire, bad shit.
Yep.
Space station. Okay. And then a ship flies over and shit starts blowing up, and another ship flies over. You're like, oh, this is cool as hell. And you realize that the Empire might actually be efficient at something because they capture the ship, they kill all the people on board. The joke's been made a million times where they save the ammo by not shooting the one escape pod that goes away because there's no life signs on board. But yeah, it's about as good an opening movie or opening scenes to a movie as you can get. It makes you pumped up for the good guys are trying something. There's androids. That's pretty cool. Nothing's too sophisticated because I'm talking about the non-special edition ones. Like,
right.
The special edition ones throw too much shit into it, but it's like physical effects are still good. Like they look good, they hold up, and you can't get too busy with them because otherwise it would be a mess. And then you get to whiny Luke, which he's not really that whiny, but
I mean, he's a kid effectively in this movie, so you can forgive him. You know, having been a teenage boy and knowing enough teenage boys, you can kind of forgive that.
Yeah, like he lived alone with his aunt and uncle in a pre-internet age in the middle of the desert. Like,
right.
Literally, his balls.
He's got shit to whine. He's got shit to whine about.
He's angsty. He wants to go someplace to be alone and jerk off where there's not fucking robots walking around recording everything.
If there would have been space grunge, he would have been into it.
And they got a giant oil bath for some reason, but he can't go to Tashi and pick up some power converters. So that's his bag. But yeah, they buy some androids from some probably racist things. I'm sure they'd be indigenous.
I think they're racist against little people.
Well, yeah, and like they're indigenous, so they got to be like the sand people.
Yeah.
Can you imagine calling somebody a sand person in a movie today? Like you can't.
So,
dude. That's.
I'm trying to remember how it went, but apparently it was either sand people or Tusken Raider was actually basically a racist term towards those people.
Sand people.
Yeah.
Because they were the Tusken Raiders.
Right. I can't remember which way it went, but basically the early settlers of Tatooine, there was a big battle between them, and then I think they raided the city of Tusken, and they became known as the Tusken Raiders, and it basically became a term to refer to the Sand People. I can't remember exactly how it went. Not to plug another Star Wars podcast, but if you listen to the Star Wars Minute podcast, they dive into that.
Cut! No. No, yeah. And that's like, sometimes with this, you get a case of my childhood was better than your childhood.
Yeah.
But the legend stuff, a lot of that was really well thought out with the comic books, because in the 80s and 90s there wasn't, like early 90s, there wasn't much of it coming out.
Yeah.
And then like 93, 94, it started to kind of blow up again. And then comic books were everywhere, video games, like the Shadow of the Empire series was pretty cool. And it started to become more mainstream, and then they got the steam to build the piles of shit we just talked about. So there was a lot of intricate stuff with that universe that they never explained on screen, and that's an okay thing, because J.R.R. Tolkien, spoiler alert, I'm also a Lord of the Rings nerd, one of his rules was to never explain something. Never fully explain anything, because then it's stupid. Because it can't happen. But if you say this happens because of this, well, okay, that makes sense. They got the Force because he thinks about it.
Right.
Well, not.
Well, and that's one of the things with science fiction as well. It's like you include enough science to be reasonable, but then you're given like one leap of faith. You're allowed like one leap of faith in hard science fiction.
Yeah.
To say, okay, this suspend your disbelief for this one thing. And I think that, and that's also been an argument that's been made with Star Wars, is that's why Star Wars is a space fantasy, not science fiction.
Yeah, and like the first Star Wars gave you, I always looked at it as the jumping point to your own fantasy.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fuck Darth Vader, but like it left things vague enough, and it left stories open-ended enough to where you could fill in the blanks, or you can use comics to fill in some of the blanks, and not have this bottled up rule set that couldn't live outside of the movies. The sequel trilogy destroyed that, like all but literally destroyed that as a concept. And the prequels tried to with the midichlorians, but they
among other things.
The thing is, the timing is interesting, because you bring up, in the 90s that stuff started blowing up. Well, think about who was coming of age and was able to start writing stuff. It's the kids that grew up with Star Wars, that had the toys and action figures, that made up their own stories because of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
They wanted to fill in those blanks. They had stories they wanted to tell. So they started, you didn't have all the streaming platforms now or anything like that. So you started writing comics, you started writing books. And George Lucas was smart enough to at least start licensing that stuff out, to start filling in that background. So as kids were really invested in it, were now writing for it, because that was their stuff. It was almost fan fiction being written, but really thought up, because that's what they loved. Yeah. They wasn't there to make a giant buck. I need to make $1 billion. It's like, no, this is a good story. I think it'd be great. I want to tell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and nobody thought Star Wars was going to be worth a shit. Like, so a dude said, look, I got a story of a rebels group fighting a space wizard with a giant space dog and another space wizard on their side and a space wizard apprentice. And there's a planet that blows up other planets, and there's a wolf and a chicken in a bar.
Are we getting ready to watch heavy metal?
Yeah, like, so when the movie was done, like George Lucas had already made, I think, American Graffiti, and they'd given him some leeway. But they were also they also didn't believe that anybody would really care, and nobody would buy the toys. So yeah, you can have all the rights to the toys, and he made billions of dollars off of that shit because he made shit that wants. But they didn't over-explain stuff. So you have droids walking through the desert. Somebody took the time to put a giant, later on, I think they called it crate dragon, like skeleton in the background. They don't even reference it. They just walk by. And that's, it's not like, oh, that's a crate dragon, and then have something flop in and kids, little chirpy chirps flopping all over the place. Like it's just in the background, just doing its own thing. So the story progresses. He meets Obi-Wan Kenobi. The droid tries to run away. Then his family gets murdered and burnt, ironically, as Skywalkers tend to do. And then he flies with this old guy that has been known as a crazy old guy to another fucking planet with a criminal and his dog. Like, hey, there's a bar. This town is a real shithole. This is like Akron, Ohio. Don't talk to anybody. Like, Just leave them be. We're going to go in here. We're going to find a pilot.
Yeah.
So they go talk to that pilot. The first thing the guy does is cut off a dude's arm for trying to kill him. And the second thing he does is rip Han Solo off. They agree to a price, and then he sells his piece of shit speeder for less. He's like, it'll be enough. Don't worry about it. He's a pirate. He doesn't give a fuck. And then you come across like one of the better characters in the Star Wars franchise, in Han Solo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Somebody who was a piece of shit and did the right thing.
Yeah.
And he shot first.
What's that?
Oh, it was Greedo. According to the VHS tape I have over here,
yeah,
Greedo shot first. Han shot first.
Yeah.
I have it on Laserdisc. That's how much of a nerd I am. Han shot first.
Yeah, because Han Solo fucking wants to kill him. He literally, from the moment he sits down, he unbuckles his gun to blast him in the face because he's not going to go to Jabba the Hutt. And in the like special editions, they try to change it to where he's a good guy. Why? He's a piece of shit. Like, this is the story of redemption for Han Solo. You go from drug smuggling piece of shit, because spice is apparently the drug of Star Wars. You can't say heroin. Like, you dump a load of heroin on the way to the Mos Eisley's, like, you got a problem. Drug smuggling space pirate to general in 2 movies.
Right.
And the second movie, all he does is run away and bang a princess. Like,
which is not a bad thing to do.
No, he doesn't. I mean, it leads to questions about the rebels' evacuation plan when the princess's last hope is a pirate ship.
Yeah.
But they also, like, in this movie, they bring up the fact the Millennium Falcon is not the Millennium Falcon of today. It is a raging piece of shit that's pretty fast. So, like, they know Princess Leia's like, dude, they let you get away. Those are Imperial fighters that could have shot you out of the sky, but they literally flew around until you got away. They're tracking you. They go through. They know the Millennium Falcon's a piece of shit. They rescue the princess. The good guy makes a sacrifice to let the other good guys get away. They go to the planet. There's a countdown and a big explosion. Yeehaw, we use the space wizard's power and shot a torpedo down a hole. Womprats must be fucking scary. Like 2-meter fucking rat watching around. And I never understood why they couldn't just fly at the hole. Like,
you can't just fly at the hole.
I know. Like, you got to go up the crack and then slip it into the hole.
You have to gently work your way up.
Hey, I think there's something like this, and you got to curl in. Is what's going on there? Is how it goes.
Fly up the crack, and then every time I'm making relations with my wife,
you got to go like this, and then you got to curl in so you hook it, and then that's how you do that.
She hears
right under the tailbone.
Yeah, I'm just rubbing my dick in her leg, being like, "Stay on target, stay on target." And the only thing that was really annoying about that fight was, they cut the scene that made Biggs like an important character. He was like Biggs, Luke's best friend in Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they got to fight together, it was a big deal. And then he dies, and Luke's sad. But I mean, he shows more emotions for Biggs than he did Porkins. And that's kind of sad that there's a pilot that named Porkins.
And it was the fat one.
Yeah, of course he was. In sync, I didn't realize
Joey Fat One.
Joey Fat One was the fat one. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else about this movie that, like, I would say this is one of the classics. Like, if you're raising children and they're interested at all in sci-fi or in movies in general, like, this is one you would show them and be like, here's a movie.
Oh, without a doubt.
Well, it's got the classic hero arc in it. You know what I mean? You got the guy out in the wilderness, wherever. He has to have some great adventure to come back, something special. He comes out, meets a space wizard, goes out and does the space wizard thing to learn things because he learns about the Force, which Han Solo is like, that's all hocus pocus. That's not real. Mm-hmm. There are no such thing as that, which is amazing that the whole galaxy totally forgot that, Jedi were a thing.
Twice.
Twice, yes.
Yeah, like they don't exist. Oh no, they're not real. I'm like, dude, they had a whole society and were basically like the super police officers of the galaxy. It
Within the
makes no
last 2
sense.
decades.
Literally,
Yes, I'm
Han
like,
Solo was probably like 10 when they all got murdered. So he
Right.
probably would have heard about Jedi.
exactly. Like it doesn't make sense that they're like, oh, they're not real. I'm like, whatever. I mean, I know in canon through the books or whatever, I guess, most Jedi, there's like maybe one per planet or some weird thing, if I remember right, from the way they describe it, like how many persons might be a Jedi to be able to do things.
Mhm.
It's like super rare.
A slave child on Tatooine, which is always the backwater planet, but they go to it in every fucking movie,
Yeah.
heard a Jedi. It was like, wow, Jedis can't be killed. Somebody on a populated planet would have likely heard a Jedi. Like they had their own temple. Like they were probably a force, but yeah, that was weird. This escape from the Death Star thing was, obviously they fix it by saying they let us go, right? You're tracking them, right? Otherwise, it would have been stupid to have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember that in the world of Star Wars, the Millennium Falcon is like a fucking tugboat or like a fishing trawler, and then having a nuclear submarine and a bunch of F-15s not be able to hit it. Like that's the kind of differential that they're looking at when you're looking at what the Empire would be compared to what, literally something that everybody sees and is like, Jesus, that's a piece of shit.
I would liken the Millennium Falcon more to like a moonshine runner. He's got to keep a low profile, but he's got a little something under the hood. So,
Does he have NOS? I feel like he has NOS.
Probably has
Has he got NOS?
That was the hyperdrive, which was always broken.
Yeah.
Until you bang on it, because
Right.
that's how it works.
Right.
Well, it's probably all transistors. I mean, it was an old chip. Just a tube, like an old tube.
Yeah, probably tubes in there. Yep.
Yeah, replace the tubes.
One of them got loose. Just got to wiggle it a little bit.
Yeah, I got fucking dog
Blow
hair
on it.
everywhere.
No, but it had to be its own standalone movie, because when it got made, there was no guarantee there was ever going to be another one. I know, George Lucas had his vision of a whole space opera, full thing, but there's no guarantee at that point that any other movie was going to get made.
And the fact that it was as good as it was is a testament to George Lucas not paying attention to Flash fucking Gordon.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were wacky. Like they were terrible.
Hey, don't be knocking Flash Gordon. I think Flash Gordon's great only for the Queen.
Yeah.
I mean, Flash.
Yeah, but that was post Star Wars. And was it Brian Bellows, the guy who plays the Hawkman? Is just watch it. Google interviews of him.
Yeah.
Do it right now. Stop watching a shitty podcast. He's a fucking nut job.
I know.
And he was Boss Nass apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he ruined that too. That was ruined. We could have had him just be Hawkman the whole time. Yeah, I solidly give this movie like a 7.
I would say that if we were to put the Star Wars movies where you have to bookend them, a movie is a 1 and a movie is a 10, and everything else is rated on the scale in between, this is the 9.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more of an 8 is what I would say for this one, because I mean, my favorite Star Wars movie is coming up for the next one.
Well,
but this one is a solid movie because it had to be. It wasn't like the prequels where, hey, we're going to make a trilogy. You didn't know you were going to make a trilogy, so you had to bat it out of the park the first time. It's just like in the sci-fi realm, I think The Matrix is awesome. The very first movie is great because they weren't planning on making the other ones. They needed to have a good story front and center. They weren't going to leave any real interesting things to be like, oh, what is going to happen in the next episode type of thing. They were like, this is the movie. This is what you're getting. and
they
that's
should have
how it
stopped
needed
at
to be.
one.
And that series should have stopped at one. I mean, the two other movies past, it's like you're trying to be too meta with yourself. You're trying to do too much.
You have to
I
have a
still
cave
enjoyed them.
rave.
Hey,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying there's some late nights in the bathroom with that scene. I'm just saying.
Hey, there weren't a lot of Trumper hats at the cave rave. They didn't. Not a lot of them made it to the post time, so guns must not be everything. Yeah, I give it like a 7. It has its faults. It has its cheesy moments. It's lovable cheesy, not cringeworthy.
Yeah.
Like you never get douchey chills when you're like, oh God, someone's watching me watch this, and then they had to see that scene and think I'm enjoying it.
Right.
There's no.
Well, and the practical effects still hold up. You watch the originals, not the special editions, and they're not bad because practical effects work for what you want.
Mhm.
And the whole cantina scene is awesome to have something like that, to the point where they have to always have a cantina scene in all the other movies at some point.
Yeah. And it just to point out their racism against droids for not letting them drink in their bar. Like, hey, you get out of here. You go stand by those giant elephant things that we're going to put in 20 years.
Okay, so Zeb, so speaking of special editions, so Zeb, you've got the Laserdisc,
Yes.
which is 1990.
They are pre special edition, so they are wide letter box, Dolby Digital. If you have the right Laserdisc player to pump it out, because Dolby Digital was not optical or anything, you have to have like an RF thing to get it to work right for the audio. Video quality is as good as you're gonna get because they lost the masters after they digitized them or some weird thing. Why they can't re-release them? It's odd.
The masters, the film they use basically just
Disintegrated.
The chemicals keep processing, so they blank out.
Yeah.
Which is why the special editions exist in the first place, because they had to touch up. Like
right. So I've got like one of the original touched up editions, which was I think I've got it on VHS, which I think was 95.
The Darth Vader helmet box set.
Yeah. So so Han still shoots first, which is great. The worst part of the whole thing is that I have to watch a stupid or fast forward through a stupid interview with Leonard Maltin and George Lucas. Every time I want to watch it. Yeah.
That guy wrote a book about movies. How useless do you think he feels in the internet age? Check out my book about this movie. What? A book?
Go away, Leonard Maltin.
Fuck that. Yeah, so Death Star blows up. If I figure out After Effects, it'll be. They were smart to have Darth Vader fly away.
Yep.
He flew away. They go home, they party, the Millennium Falcon and the X-Wing land at apparently the same time so they can run to each other's arms. And then a girl was there too. Like they both ran to the boy's arms and the girl's like, me too. I was here too. The only woman in the original series, other than Mon Mothma or whatever, the girl at the end.
Oh yeah.
They didn't. Yeah. The Bothans died lady. They give everybody but Chewie a medal in a very organized.
Again, they're racist.
Yeah, I mean he's a co-pilot. Fuck that guy. He likely didn't do anything. He just waited for Han to die so he could take the controls. And then they start. They go about their thing. The movie ends. Next episode starts. Roll credits, bling, rolling a scroll. Oh, fuck. Rebellion's still fucked. Like, they're running from the Empire. The Empire didn't lose their only one thing. They have a whole fleet of ships, and now they're after them still. And it starts with a really cool scene of shooting off the probes and crashing and stuff. And I have trouble talking about Empire Strikes Back because there's nothing terrible about it. Like it's by far the best movie of the Star Wars series.
Hands down, without a doubt.
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best Star Wars movie, this is the 10.
Yeah.
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 100%.
Which
As it
this is
ends
the
on a
one
downer.
that George Lucas didn't direct.
Yeah, Irving
Imagine that.
Kershner did. who
Yeah.
did a pretty damn good job.
Yeah.
The special editions fucked up a couple of really, really small things that made the movie better. One of my most annoying ones is after Luke falls, they added like a scream, which you don't need to do that. Like, obviously he's falling. We know he's scared. And so Darth Vader walks outside, and in the original version, he's like, "Bring my shuttle."
Bring my shuttle.
Like, this badass, like, I'm pissed because I just threw my kid down a fucking hole. And in the special edition, they're like, tell him my star. He goes on this long flowery speech about how he's going to come to a Star Destroyer and make sure that they're ready for his arrival.
Alert my Star Destroyer to prepare for my arrival.
Like, this badass, like, I'm pissed because I just threw my kid down a fucking hole. And in the special edition, they're like, tell him my star. He goes on this long flowery speech about how he's going to come to a Star Destroyer and make sure that they're ready for his arrival. And it takes away the whole character of it takes away all of the, I'm really pissed that it didn't go my way. Like, people are watching out for me, because in the entire movie, that's the movie that makes you afraid of Darth Vader.
Oh yeah,
without the first one, he's choking other people and kills a bunch of rebels on the plane, and he just stands there like this a lot. And then the princess is obviously scared of him because he's got the heroin ball, the floating heroin ball that gets him addicted to heroin, so they answer questions. But the next one, like, his own people, they fuck up. You're choked. You're dead. Replacing you, because I don't give a shit about you. I need to get this done. I'm serving a master. Yeah, they kind of take a little bit of that away from him because he's not all rage. I don't know. It was a really shocking, glaringly painful moment when you're watching the special editions. You notice that change. You're like, oh, why? That's stupid. Don't need to do that. I did like the fact that Ice Cream Machine Man got his own action figure out of this movie. Like, that's the level the Legends was up to, was Ice Cream Machine Man has his own backstory, and he's just running around with an ice cream machine. To date, the only black person to enter Star Wars in the original movies turns out to be a traitor, and he betrays his friends and hands them over to the bad guys. That's probably not a woke choice by now.
Side note, I did see a great meme the other day that was like, every Star Wars character gets bitter when they get older, except Lando Calrissian. Because it shows like young Obi-Wan, old Obi-Wan, young Anakin, old Anakin, young Luke, old Luke, and they're all just get like old and surly. And then they show Lando, and it's just like all smiles.
Yeah, when you see Lando in the last movie, he's still fucking. Like, he's just taking a break from fucking to do this mission, but he's still fucking. He ain't paused on that. Where Han, he gave that up years ago. He got tired of chasing people off his lawn, so he got another starship and went on his way. Yeah, this one, Empire, is the big reveal.
Yep.
I'm your father.
Yep.
Everybody knows it now.
Stub hand. Gets his hand. He loses his hand.
Yeah.
That was one of my things with the sequel trilogy. I was expecting somebody to lose their right hand.
Are they going to find it somewhere?
I was super disappointed in episode 8 that Rey didn't get her hand cut off.
I think, episode 8 is its own anomaly because they did everything the way you expected them, but opposite.
Yeah. Right. Because, Anakin gets his hand cut off in episode 2. Luke gets his hand cut off in episode 5. Yeah. I really expected Rey to get her hand cut off in episode 8. Something.
And it meant something.
I say a foot.
Like, his hand's cut off, and he's at the end of Return of the Jedi fighting Darth Vader, and he's like, I cut his hand off. And I'm already part robot. Like, I'm turning into him, dude. I give up.
Yep.
Hit me with electricity. I don't care. Yeah, so that movie's it's hard to bitch, and it's not wrecked by the stuff in the later movies, which we'll get
No.
into with time frames and shit. But yeah, if that's on, I'll sit down and watch that any day of the week. Like that's,
Oh yeah.
Well, it's all action
finish.
all the time because you start out, you're on Hoth, so you're doing all the the ice ship space battles. You got the AT walkers. You're doing all that fun stuff. Then you jump into just running through asteroids, doing all. I mean, it's nonstop action the entire time for that movie for the most part. I mean, other than a few scenes on the Cloud City stuff, it just hits you in the face and just doesn't let up. Which is great.
Yeah. And the rebels get the shit kicked out of them.
Yeah.
Which they should. Like
they lose.
Yeah, literally. We send our Air Force over to Kandahar. We find rebels, we blow the fuck out of them. And they might kill some of our people, but that's what empires do to small ragtag rebels.
If the rebels always won, they would be the empire.
Yeah.
Ding ding ding.
Yeah. And they don't. And so like they're all shot to pieces and they're, scrambling and running, and it puts the empire where they should be, which is the bad guys, instead of there's a guy that we're not worried about anymore. And this is the movie with the least amount of ham. Like there's some stuff with Chewie yelling at Han and them trying to fix the Millennium Falcon, but there's not like, they cut out the scene where C-3PO is walking by where the ice monster was kept at the base and rips the sign off, and then stormtroopers go in and get eaten by it. Like they cut that shit out of it, and the movie's better for it.
Yeah,
definitely the top of the tier. And so Luke's got a dad. He's now sad he has to buy Father's Day gifts. He's got a new hand. You got to take that for a test spin, but his fucking sister won't leave him alone. Like this lady just keeps hanging around with a stupid robot, and he just wants to jerk his meat with his new robot hand. And then they turn towards a nebula and end of the movie. And you see at the end of the movie, it's not the end of the rebellion. They're still there. They're getting ready to fight. Like you're ready for the next one. Cliffhangers are great. And then the next one comes.
And we get teddy bears.
And you get teddy bears, and you get belching frogs, and you get all the symptoms that started that were in the prequel started this movie.
Yeah.
So starts out great. Darth Vader comes to the Empire, or comes to the Death Star. They're making another one because we can't think of anything else. So let's make another Death Star.
At least they only did it twice.
Yeah, let's patch that hole. They just put a tarp or something over it, so you can't just shoot torpedoes down it.
Insurance money. That's how they're funding it.
It's not like they were going to build
insurance money for the first one to build the second one.
It's not like they decided to build a third Death Star at any point in time.
No, they went way beyond that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're building Death Star, and he shows up. He's like, "Yeah, you should be scared because I'm not going to kill you. My boss is coming. And if you're not on time, he's going to kill you. So, chop chop. I don't want to explain myself to him. You're going to have to do it." And so you're all you're excited. You're going to get to see the Emperor, which you've known from day one. There's an Emperor because it's an empire, and Darth Vader has to serve somebody. And then they flip to Han still trapped in carbonite, and the cavalcade of introduction starts. Like first they bring Chewie. Did they bring Chewie in first, or the Princess Leia brings in Chewie?
Yes.
Princess Leia brings in Chewie.
Yeah.
And then Chewie gets taken away. Then they release Han, and then Princess Leia gets captured. And then in the most unnoticeable head nod in history, Lando's like, because he's a guard now. And then Luke's there, and nobody's afraid of Jedi. And there's a pretty cool scene in the fight thing. I don't know why Jabba can be.
We've skipped the bikini.
You skipped the bikini.
Yeah.
You also forget. How does Jabba forget that Jedi are thick? If they're mobsters, because he's a mobster, and say the Jedi were around like 40 years ago as these super space wizards, They would know about them. Like, oh, that's a Jedi. Holy shit, I should be scared.
Yeah, and apparently, like in the legends, Hutt's
There's a
lives
whole
for-
there's been one Hutt Jedi, as I understand it, but they are very aware, and they're very. There's been a long history between the Jedi and the Hutts.
Yeah, and they also lived for a really long time.
Yeah.
Like they like hundreds of years, I think. So they would have known about him. I think it was more of just a like, yeah, you're a Jedi. Go fuck yourself. Yeah, nice hand, dipshit. Come fight my giant monster. Carrie Fisher, I think, always regretted wearing the bikini because it's iconic. But she would always get told by nerds, "You're the first person I jerked off to." It was like that was never a pleasant. Like, I don't want to hear that.
I didn't jerk off to her until Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
I was more the Burbs guy. But yeah, like that whole scene, there was a lot of cheese. The cheese was started there and it continued through the movie, and you kind of knew this was going to be a different tone movie than Empire, but it was a neat action scene. Of course, they blow up the bad guys, literally murder an entire ship full of people.
Yep.
Sarlacc's not going to need food for years. Like, you're going to get digested over 1,000 years. You're only going to live for what, 10, 20 days in the middle of a desert, even if you have water. So who cares? Yeah. So they somehow got C-3PO and R2-D2 onto the deck of that little sand speeder, which is the most unrealistic thing in the entire shot. They pick them up from the underneath, and then when they're flying away, they're on top. Don't ask me how. No engineering feat of that. And then Luke hops back in his X-Wing, goes to Dagobah. Han flies off to the Rebel fleet, and they start their own thing. On Dagobah, Yoda's dying, of course, because everybody shows up when they're dying.
Right.
And he finds out, he waits literally until his last breath to let him know, by the way, there's another one, and then disappears. And then Obi-Wan's like, dude, now I gotta, I'm a fucking ghost. I shouldn't have to explain this shit to you. And then he has to tell him he has a sister and that you made out with your sister one time and probably jerked off with your robot hand to your sister. Like, this is a problem, Luke. You need to stop. I'm a fucking ghost. I watch you all the time. I'm not just here at Dagobah. Stop jerking off with your robot. We talked about this at Jedi School.
Stop thinking about your sister while you're jerking off. This isn't 2020 America.
Yeah, she's not your stepsister. She's not stuck in a dryer. Like,
this is not Missouri. No. This is totally not Missouri.
And so he goes off to fight and is assured he's a Jedi, which you can make the assumption there was training in between the movies. So he's not just the same person. And he shows up as a different person. Another epic space battle. I think the best one in the series, to be honest with you. The space battle, and with the exception of the Super Star Destroyer getting knocked out by one ship and crashing into the Death Star, everything else is, like, special effects wise, is really good. And then the Ewoks.
We got to talk about them. Can we just skip them?
Yeah, we can skip them.
I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's teddy bears.
It's not Warwick Davis's best role.
Well, and the Ewoks in itself don't, like, I knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to be like the Mujahideen, the indigenous people defeating a mighty empire with primitive weapons,
but they're also trying to make them, palatable and desirable to little kids, because
toys.
This movie came out 8 years after the first one, or 6 years after the first one, so
we know we could sell a shit ton of Ewok toys. We could do an Ewoks cartoon. Like, these are marketable things, and this seems like a marketing decision.
My brother and I had stuffed Ewoks, and it was a thing.
Oh, that explains a lot. I'm going to say that right now, Aaron. That explains a lot.
You're welcome.
Yeah, they were. I never understood how they had the time to hang the logs far enough apart to crush that one walker. Like, the amount of luck that he walks to that one spot the moment you're ready to cut the wire. Like, that's a lot of resources for a lucky shot. And I think the thing that ruins it isn't that, hey, you defeated some of my Imperial guys. An entire legion of my best troops, literally the cream of the crop, beat by a bunch of little tiny furry monkeys with string rope things. Like, all they would have had to do is literally be like, dude, there's a lot of fucking monkeys out there throwing rocks at us. Let's just close this door, and then we'll never be bothered, because it's a metal door. It's a big metal door, so we'll just lock it. Like,
Let's
what the
just
fuck are they gonna do?
everything on the outside and come out later.
Napalm, just napalm everything. We don't have to worry about it.
What's that? Rebel fleet? All right. It says the rebel fleet's up there, so we got to give them like 30 minutes. Just close the door. We're good. But instead, they like tried to fake Han and his 12 people to come in and give the, like take over the place.
Yep.
And then, honestly, one of the worst special effects in the entire series is when they blow up the satellite dish. Watch that on video and tell me everybody within a 30-mile radius wouldn't be obliterated. It's literally like a fucking A-bomb going off, and Han's like, okay, we got it. It's like you'd have been fucking tree. It would have been Tunguska. Trees would have been just leveled for 1,000 miles. Not to mention all the fallout from a giant exploding small moon falling onto your planet afterwards. Like, all that shit ain't burning up. And it didn't burn up. Or there's another planet in their system that obviously it could fall to. Because later on in another movie, they have to visit the Death Star for some reason. Unless there was a third Death Star that they blew up, and that was the one they visited. But
I thought that got brought up at some point about, leftovers from the Death Star on Tatooine or on the moon of Endor. I can't remember.
The place they go in, was it?
I guess it would have been Yavin is the planet. Endor's the moon.
There's the moon.
Yeah,
Endor's the moon. Endor's the moon.
But Yavin was the planet from the first one.
No, Yavin was the planet on that one, because that was the Battle of Yavin, and everything is judged, and that's the timeline. That's like their ADBC is after the Battle of Yavin. It's ABY.
Aaron.
Isn't it?
No, that was the first one.
Pretty sure.
Because they're on like Yavin 3, the first one. And then and the second one was in the Battle of Endor. And then I'm sure there was another planet, but it was a moon. And then in Rise of Skywalker, that hull made it intact somehow to the ground. So it's a pretty sturdy ship. That one torpedo and a couple of laser bolts can blow up. But anyway, they blow up the second Death Star. They really need to put some circuit breakers in those reactors or something, like put box around it. Fuse box. You got to have it like the screw-in type, just hanging on the wall. Like in my garage. I always had that in Star Wars too. Like, they would be under attack and their panel would just blow up and be like, just put a fucking fuse there. Like, you wouldn't have this panel blown up. But all the good guys live. All of them. Like, everybody has a name in regular movies lives. Wedge lives. Wedge is like the big hero of the space battle with Neum Nub, the guy who I'm sure is racist. Like, I'm sure that's a racist thing now. That's why he killed him off.
In some way, he has got to be.
Yeah. And then Lando.
I always feel like he needs to be hosed down, though.
I don't know. I know what they did with the Falcon there, but at the same time, that can't be your best fighter ship that you can offer the general who's in charge of your. Like, Rebels have one rank, and it's general. If you've done anything, you're now a general. They're like the fucking Libyans, like where everybody was a colonel and got a chrome pistol. General Calrissian, General Solo. I'm sure Skywalker was a general. Leia was a general. Like, how many people are like, dude, I can't even get second lieutenant here. Like, I've been in OCS for forever, but you won't give me a commission. Anyway, all the good guys live. Luke brings back a probably pretty heavy robot corpse and burns it on the moon. And then an old Anakin Skywalker now replaced with the young Anakin Skywalker is now a ghost. and they sang Nub Nub, and everybody's happy. Yeah, that's that movie. Is that a good summary?
That pretty much nails it.
Yeah, like I give this one like a 5.5 or 6. 6 probably out of nostalgia.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna go with, the 6 as well.
I'm more of a 7 guy, and the reason why, hear me out, is the final battle. Well, the lightsaber duel at the end. And I am going to say lightsaber for a very specific reason for later on when we go to our next movie.
Yeah.
Why it's a lightsaber and not a laser sword, but that's a different discussion. We'll put that to the side. There are some epic good battles about where, story-wise, the only downside of that movie is totally the Ewoks. Everything else there is pretty okay in my mind. So that's why I'm going to say like it's a solid 7-8 for me.
Everything
that's why.
Everything that's not battle in the movie kind of sucks. So like the battle between Luke and Darth Vader, good. Even the little chat with Luke and Darth Vader, everything with Darth Vader is okay. Everything with battle is okay. Everything else kind of seems like, well, that's to get us to another battle or to fill in some time to walk around the woods to get a free trip to the state park of California.
Well, the speeder scene in the trees and stuff, that's pretty cool. The whole riding around, and then that's pretty neat.
Special effects wise, cool as hell.
Yes.
Story wise, stupid. Do none of those fucking idiots have a radio? Like they have helmets with radios in them, and they could be like, "Hey, there's rebels out here." I give up, and then have the entire army know there's rebels out there. And it didn't even matter because the Emperor knew there were rebels there anyway. Like they were all already told, hey, there's rebels out here. We're waiting for them to come in, take the control room, walk outside, and then we'll be waiting for them to scare them like Halloween. And then I could say, you rebel scum. So there's a lot of troubles I have with it. By far the best Super Nintendo game, though.
Never played it.
Yeah. Super Star Wars and Super Empire Strikes Back are some of the hardest games released on that stupid thing. Like I never beat Super Star Wars, and I only beat Super Empire Strikes Back by the skin of my teeth. Super Return of the Jedi, good game. Pretty easy.
And I will say they made a really good bad lip reading for this one too.
Into that.
Jack Black as Darth Vader. Solid.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Add that to my list of things. Yeah, it's an iconic movie. But unfortunately, it told you the direction they were going to head with the prequels, and sadly, they didn't stick serious enough. I read a thing just the other day. Mark Hamill said George Lucas wanted Daffy Duck cartoons before Star Wars because he wanted people to know it wasn't a serious like war movie. It was shot down for some reason, but yeah, like George Lucas, when he got full authority, right off the deep end. And
it was his universe, and that's the thing is, George Lucas, when he came up with it, had the great thing, wanted to do the first movie, so he chose the best story. And obviously, it was the better story because the prequels that he makes after these are terrible, and he shouldn't have made them. He should have left that be. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I get the whole it's my story thing. Harry Potter lady's running into it now. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
If you make $1 billion off a franchise, zip it. Nobody wants to hear how they crap on the halls and just use magic to disappear. Like it ruins the universe. Let them think there's toilets. There's no reason to bring it up.